recording. And yes, if you could mute yourselves so I don't have to do it for you. I think by now we're pretty much experts in the Zoom technology. And thanks everybody for joining us on a nice, lovely Wednesday afternoon. And I just want to thank, first I want to thank Mark for agreeing to spend some time with us to talk about the great work that he's doing. And of course, we have a chance to hear from a meet in person, Eric Fingerhut, who, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was announced May 16th, a year ago, that you took this position. You think like, oh yeah, first year, we'll get to know each other. What could possibly happen, right? Who thinks the world's gonna fall apart, right? But
Mark didn't tell me about this part.
Yeah, you and me both. And it's great we're gonna have a conversation just about, federation is such an important part of certainly in our community, but really all over, and to get kind of this macro view of what's going on. And I want to thank Michael also for the campaign chair, who's actually sponsoring this program, to helping the Shul, helping Federation. So really, without further ado, we're going to talk about the fact that for the first time in a long time, Minnesota's hosting Green Bay on opening night, which hasn't happened in, oh, I'm sorry, wrong Zoom again. But please, Mark, if you'd lead us off, please tell us what you've been up to. How's your role in JFNA and what's been going on most recently with this crisis?
Well, thanks, Rabbi. And I do want to just start this off. It's great to see everybody. And I have to thank you, Rabbi, for giving us sustenance every morning with your shears and with your, just the great esprit de corps. It's a real mishpacha. And I know Eric is our special guest today, but I have to tell you, it's just really uplifting during all this, what you've provided all of us. And I don't know if you get that enough, but I know it's not easy. Hello, Jane. But really, it's a beautiful thing. And it really, we know we have Eric, I just want to tell you, we're very proud of our community, of our federation, and our little shtibel here. And we'll hopefully, initially it was going to be an in-person event, and God willing, we'll be able to do an in-person event to follow up further down the road. But really, thank you, Rabbi, for your leadership. That's first and foremost.
I can't wait to come daven with you sometime.
Okay. I gotta thank all of you. I see you're my friends. You're my mishpacha extended. So it's great to see all of you. You all pretty much get what Federation's about. Thank you for your donations, your time, what you've given to Federation, to the community. I know you're all doing different things. We last got together in person, a lot of us at APAC. That was a little over 2 months ago. Seems like years away. And I just am very proud of the fact that we as a community, as a shul, really step up with Etz Yisrael, of course. The connection there is so strong. And Eric, we have a lot of survivor families, people that are very connected to overseas in a special way. And I got to, again, also mention Michael here, chairing our campaign, doing an incredible job here. I mean, everyone here is involved doing different things, leadership in campaign, leadership in IREP, leadership in a lot of ways. So I just want to maybe, I want to just touch on a little bit about what JFNA we're up to, what we're up to at Federations, maybe give some reminder of the basics of what our Federation system is. For those of you that maybe you're less familiar, I think most of you are, but maybe not all. So the fact of the matter is, Federation's always been there. JFNA, Jewish Federations in North America. There are 146 Jewish federations, 300 unfederated network communities. We raised last year nearly $1 billion for annual campaign, and almost $2 billion if you include all our endowment income. And it's an enormous network, and it really is the community in so many senses. It's around Eretz Yisrael and supporting the social services there, and also in our local communities, taking care of our schools, our family services, our community centers, all the things that we know as Jewish life, our synagogues, supporting all aspects of Jewish life. So a lot's obviously been going on. Our worlds have been turned upside down. I can tell you, being firsthand, the tremendous privilege and honor to be chair of the board of the Jewish Federations of North America. I think it's a great honor for me. I think it's a great statement about our community as well, to be represented. And really what I've gotten to see firsthand, it's a little over a year and a half since I've taken on the role. Just in this pandemic, we have our first responders, we have our healthcare workers, doctors and nurses and everyone in the hospitals and so forth. They really are our heroes. But when it comes to the Jewish community, I've really seen tremendous, like the way you're leading, Rabbi, and just on the front lines, all the executives, all the camp directors, the JCC directors, the family schools, the family service staffs, the schools, just incredible heroism. And, our federation, the fact about federation is when things are great, it's not as out there. But the reality is we have a safety net in the Jewish community because federation is able to be here during this pandemic because we were here yesterday. And just the same way, whenever there's an attack, whenever there's a crisis, federation and our community is always there. So, tens of thousands of staff people, hundreds of institutions are right now under assault, and their very survival is at stake. So I talk about JFNA and the great honor, but I think this moment in time is going to rank up there in the great annals of our federation system. The way we brought 1 million Russians to Israel during Operation Exodus, the way we supported Israel in times of war, and now we have our own worldwide war, all of us, not just the Jewish community, but for the Jewish community, how we respond and are responding already has been truly breathtaking. Just to give you an overview, I know you're pretty familiar with Metro West and the national system, the things we do. We have a tremendous public affairs advocacy office, our Washington office. In fact, Eric, who you'll hear from in a minute, a former congressman and someone who's very familiar with the public affairs, but I can tell you that's been our biggest time consumption. Eric and his staff particularly advocating on this PPP program. I know our shul has had a funding, but we have been very, very upfront, and we're quite frankly the lead in terms of getting this PPP loan to be able to apply to nonprofits. That is a first, and for the SBA to put out these loans, and the fact is we estimate close to $500 million, $500 million has already gone out in the last 8 weeks to hundreds, I believe it's in the hundreds of Jewish institutions. And that ranges, like I said, to JCCs, to shuls, to camps, to all aspects of Jewish life. So I have to really recognize Eric, and I'm sure he'll speak more to when I introduce him. But I did want to bring that up and say that it's just a great honor to be able to not just advocate for it, but also we hosted about 15 webinars. We continue to host those on a regular basis. And that's instructing all the institutions how to get a hold of their banking relationships, how to apply for these loans. So we've ramped up our camp directors, rabbis, executive directors to learn this aspect of public advocacy. And I think that's why we're able to get in first in line and really, really make a difference. Another thing we've been very active in working on is working with all the other national umbrellas. We've put together a coalition to fight this pandemic, and we have the National JCC Association, Family Service, the nursing home groups, the school groups, and talking through things like the HR aspect, how you deal with people that are furloughed and laid off, the PPP loans I just spoke about, how we look at the future. So all of these aspects are aspects that we're dealing with, and it's obviously tremendous time consuming, but it's something we have to do to be on the front lines. So we have other aspects that I think most of you are familiar with, our National Leadership Cabinet, our National Women's Philanthropy, our GA, which was scheduled in October, which is our thousands of people National Assembly, which we have to postpone. And we do a host of things. We support campaigns all around the country. So it's, like I said, it's a great honor, and it's a great demonstration of the kind of community we have, is that kind of cooperation and working together on all these aspects. So I'm going to spend maybe 2-3 more minutes on Metro West, just bring you up to speed. Maybe Rabbi, if you want to get the slideshow going, and then I'll introduce Eric to kind of talk about vision of the future and where we're heading, and then open up for questions. So just to bring you up to date on where we're at here at Federation. I mean, the reality is You're all seeing it firsthand. A lot of you, like I said, thank you for volunteering. I urge those of you who want to help or who are helping already and looking maybe for your kids or for other people that you know that want to contribute and help out in this time, to go online and type in Google Metro West, I want to help. And on that website, you can sign your name up and really volunteer locally. I know for Jane and myself and our kids, we were blessed to be able to, for Pesach, deliver food packages to elderly. And there are all kinds of ways to either connect virtually with some of our seniors, some of them Holocaust survivors, or to work with other people, help with putting packages together. Whatever way you want to volunteer, let's make sure we step up. And I have to say, kol hakavod to our community for stepping up. Next slide, if you could. We've raised over $5 million in additional funding just for the COVID crisis in Metro West. And I can tell you, and I don't want to take too much away from Eric's conversation, but we've raised, I believe, nationwide, close to $200 million in additional funding related to the emergencies. So we feel that the community has really stepped up in a special way. For those of you who have, we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It really makes a difference. We are, no kidding aside, we are literally saving lives. We are a lifeline to people, especially the elderly that are completely homebound. We're helping camps that many of them are canceled, getting through things. So this is just an overview of our community. I took something from our annual booklet. We have 81 synagogues, part of our Federation umbrella, 4 day schools, Kushner, Gottesman, JEC, and Golda Ox. So we're in 70 countries around the world via our overseas partner, the JDC, and our other partner, the Jewish Agency for Israel. And those of you who are in the real estate business, we're having our annual big event tomorrow for our real estate and allied trades, where Bougie Herzog, the chair of our Jewish Agency, will be speaking. So next slide, please. This is just an overview of the all the agencies. I believe there are 23 agencies that we work with in Metro West and 4 worldwide. And when you give to Federation, you're really giving to every, you're really living the Tikkun Olam message in our Torah, and also Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. We're taking care of every Jew, wherever they are, however little voice they have, and making sure that they're taken care of. You see a little pie chart, which Michael, I'm sure, could speak to as well as anybody. But this is where our dollars go to. We raise roughly $25 million annually. And like I said, we've hopefully going to increase that for 2020 with your help. But there's of course, it's by different kinds of buckets. This is our typical annual campaign where we have Israel peace, community strengthening, and providing care and support and social service. So next slide, and we'll get into some of the COVID directly. Like I said, we've raised nearly $5 million locally for the COVID emergency. More than $2.7 million has already gone out and been allocated. And let's go to the next slide. So there are many things that only Federation can do. And like I said before, these past 2 months have really shown it. Our community relations councils at the front line, like I said, with Eric's help and his incredible team, we were in the White House, we were at the Treasury Department, wherever we had to be to make sure our Jewish institutions were covered. And there's additional good news today in terms of some of the pushback on that loan. So we're continuing to advocate all the time. And we've also locally put together virtual meetings with both Senator Booker and Senator Menendez. And those were well attended by all our federations in New Jersey, as well as Metro West, which is our largest federation. Next slide, please. So just so you know, please poke around the website. I don't want to take too much time here on this, but we created a resource page, a one-stop shop for people to get information. That's the Metro West site. I also urge you to look at our JFNA website we set up specially for COVID-related emergency type things, called jewishtogether.org. So just check those out, poke around, talk to your friends about what's going on. It's really important that people know that the community is responding. Our Federation's Day School initiative with our advisory council, we've created a fund to distribute emergency tuition grants to over 170 day school families. The One Happy Camper team has been reaching out to our day and overnight camps, serving Greater Metro West. And like I said, there's been we're still fighting to keep camps open around the country, but unfortunately, the reality is many have canceled their programs. Some haven't, but I know there's a lot of work, and that pandemic coalition I spoke about earlier is going to be addressing different ways we can engage our young people virtually, and other creative ideas that are being worked on that over the summer we can engage campers that we would normally engage with live and do it virtually. And maybe those are the kind of learning experiences that can be carried forward past the summer. So out of this crisis, out of this emergency, there may be some positives in terms of new ways to engage, new ways to work on our developing community the way Rabbi Klibanoff has done even in our show. So next slide, please. So this is kind of what I just talked about. Our chaplains are staying in touch with all our clients, and they keep going to hospitals. Over the past 3 weeks, 9 Federation chaplains have been in touch with over 700 people in our community. Like I said before, Passover food packages were delivered, and the tech support hotline for seniors so they can use technology to ease isolation. These are all things that need to be done and are being done. Next slide, please. So I hope you get a sense of how proud we are. We're all proud of our shul. We're proud of the chavruta we all have. I miss seeing all of you in person, but it's great to be here virtually. And I thank the rabbi again for having us to talk a little bit about what's going on in the community. But here's another sample of the Passover resource page, the Yom HaShoah commemoration we did at Kane University virtually. We had nearly 2,000 viewers, 2 Kabbalat Shabbats for over 200 people in New Jersey, Israel, and Cherkasy. So, and then we initiated a month-long celebration of Israel, including celebrating Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut with the global Jewish community. And Eric, I give him a lot of credit to have led that Yom HaAtzmaut celebration. Next page. So that's where we're at. I will now just, that's kind of an overview of what I've been up to, what Federation has been up to, and just heroes and incredible sacrifice. And it's a very stressful time for our Jewish professionals and even for volunteers. It's a lot, but I think those of us who are able and those of us who are working hard, I tip the hat off because it's just the greatest honor to serve. And that leads me to introduce our special guest speaker. I can't tell you how much respect I have. I came into this role in October 2018, and soon after taking on the role, I realized that we'd have to choose a new CEO. Our previous CEO was departing, and we had an extensive search. And I know Eric Fingerhut from our days on the National Young Leadership Cabinet. We were young once, and we're trying to keep young. Eric has, I think many of you know Eric, but just a brief outline of his bio. Eric is from Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, the second best place in the world, I guess, in the Federation system after Metro West, New Jersey. But a state legislator in Ohio, served in Congress, in the U.S. Congress, and then subsequent to that, he led the Ohio school system, and subsequent to that, he was the CEO of the International Hillel. And he took on this role, as Rabbi Klibanoff mentioned, a year ago. Hard to believe a year ago that Eric was kind enough to accept the offer, and he hit the ground running in September. And again, no one could predict what happened, but this is the reality of the Jewish world and certainly the Federation world. There are quiet periods, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and I'm just very privileged and honored to work with Eric. I consider him a friend and a colleague, and I'm really, really grateful to you, Eric. I know how busy you are. I don't think people can appreciate how busy, but it's around the clock. So just taking these few minutes to spend with us is really appreciated. Eric.
Mark, thank you. Rabbi, thank you so much for inviting me to join your community, your Kehillah. It's I know it's a special place, and as I said earlier, I can't wait to join you in person sometime in the community. And to Mark, you all know what a special guy Mark Wilf is. How fortunate I am to have him as the chair of the board, and that he invited me to take on this role as CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America. And I saw Jane on the Zoom as well. Jane is the leader, of course, in her own right, and is the chair of our Lion of Judah conference coming up next year, God willing, and lots of other tremendous leadership roles. And to those of you who I've met either in shul here in DC or wherever we've met and serve in Federation leadership roles, I thank you. And so Mark really covered the waterfront, of both not just Metro West, but some of the highlights of what's been happening nationally and globally. I'm not going to repeat anything he said. Maybe I'll just try to add one or two things, and then I'm happy to answer any questions about anything or provide thoughts on what's happening, in our system everywhere and around the world. I would just make the basic observation. Mark already said it, that I don't think there is a better, stronger case for collective action, collective giving, collective care for community than there is in a moment like this. We live in a time when it's easy to dismiss institutions like federations as kind of old and we're the establishment, a little bit like synagogues, Rabbi. Synagogues are dated and we so much better to be innovative and startups and who needs the big building and who needs the all the things that go with it. I had that at Hillel, right? Who Hillel, oh, that's old. Kids don't want to go to Hillel. They want to go to this. They want to go to that. New startup thing. And then there comes a moment when you realize that actually we're communal people, right? We pray as a community. We celebrate as a community. We mourn as a community, and we act as a community. And we care for ourselves as a community. None of us can do it on our own. And that, I think, that principle of collective action, collective responsibility, is so evident today. People who long ago, forgot what federation was about are remembering. Wow, that's why you're there, right? Because as Mark pointed out, it's not just that we come together in time of crisis; it's that we already have the institutions in place with the skills and the capabilities to respond. I remember when I was at Hillel and. You remember there was a lot of BDS stuff on campus that started during my tenure as president of Hillel, and I'd have a donor call me up and they'd say, I want to give money to fight BDS, and I'd say, well, great. Well, then you're going to help us give money to support Shabbos dinners, right? And they said, no. I want to fight BDS. I said, well, how are we going to fight BDS if we don't have the kids together for Shabbos? If we haven't built a community, how are we going to have the community respond to? How are we going to educate people about the need? How are we going to, so that's what Federation's about. It's the community that's here day in and day out. And yes, it's here when we have crises. So thank you for supporting your community. Mark mentioned some of the collective work we've done. Certainly our public affairs work has been essential. I mean, this is the kind of crisis, friends, that as important as private philanthropy alone is not going to sustain the economy and our social structures. At this moment, this is a moment for government. Mark mentioned the role we played in helping make sure that the CARES Act, which is the big federal bill that includes this PPP program, included nonprofits and faith-based institutions. It's really, it's a pretty historic thing. I mean, we've had big bailout packages before. Think back to after 9/11, there was $1 trillion that, to support airlines that were shut down and all the other things that were needed. After 2008, the real estate collapse, housing market collapse, same thing, $1 trillion for automobiles and banks and all these others. And neither case were nonprofits considered essential. And yet this time we were able to persuade the government that they were. And I think it's perfectly appropriate. This is a unique country. I speak as a former state legislator and congressman. we don't run like some of the social democratic models in Europe or in Scandinavia or even Israel, right? A huge amount of the delivery of social services and communal services in this country are done through the nonprofit sector. And so we're a vital component, and thankfully we're able to help the government respond to that. And then, as Mark points out, every day there's a little bump in the road because it's never smooth working with government programs. And also it's a new muscle for us, right? How many synagogues ever applied for an SBA loan before this? So there was a lot of teaching and training that needed to be done. And I think we've been able to navigate that pretty successfully. Mark mentioned the national coalition that is gathered that we lead. Mark chairs it on the lay side, and I chair it on the professional side. And when we sit around a Zoom screen like this, and you've got the heads of the entire Hillel movement, of all the day schools, of all the camps, of all the JCCs, of all the human services and family service agencies, of all the assisted living associations, you're looking at, first of all, the employers of hundreds of thousands of people. You're looking at the major institutions that care for our Jewish community and are responsible for the continuity of our Jewish community. And by the way, the synagogue movements are present and as well. So that's been an important effort. And I just wanted to add, and this will be my final point, and then I'd be happy to participate in the dialogue. One of the things that's always amazed me about the federation system is it is absolutely part of our DNA that we care for Jews everywhere in the world. That not only are we're connected to Israel, we're connected to Jewish communities around the world, and this was really put to the test because I don't want to say it's easy, but if there's a crisis in Israel, or there's a crisis in Russia, there's a crisis in Argentina as there was last year, or Venezuela, so we rally, all the other parts of the world, the Jewish community, to help that place. As we well know, this is the first time where every single Jewish community in the world was being affected simultaneously. So it would have been easy for Mark and his officer team and the Federation chairs and leaders to say, look, we just got to care about our own community right now, right? We got enough problems at home. That's what we need to do. But that's not what they did. They did do that. And, through our partnership with the Jewish Agency and our funding, we've helped create a loan fund for Jewish communities in Europe, Italy, Spain, those kinds of communities that have been so hard hit economically and in terms of health and security. We've helped create a fund for nonprofits in Israel, which have been incredibly hard hit. We've helped fund the Trauma Coalition, Israel Trauma Coalition, with special funding, a number of special needs identified by the Joint Distribution Committee, by the Joint. It's really been, on top of the 150, 200 million that Mark mentioned that have been extra funding of federations locally, there's also been another 25, 30 million that's been extra funding that has been sent to Israel and overseas. And I find that particularly touching and frankly inspiring at a time like this. We've also tried to not just inform people about opportunities and funding. We formed a national coalition to provide loans and grants to Jewish agencies as well, which the Wilf family is a major supporter of. It's called the Jewish Community Response and Impact Fund. The synagogue denominations movements are all together working with that effort as well. I had one other thing on my mind, but I know what it was. But we also tried to have to celebrate a little bit. I don't know if anybody participated in the Yom HaAtzmaut or saw our Yom HaAtzmaut online celebration, which drew well over 100,000 people. Shira Haas from Stissel was the star, and we had the Platt brothers, Ben Platt, who won a Tony Award, whose mother's an officer of ours and chaired the LA Federation. His brothers sang a tune that they had just learned of, Ahavat Olam, a brand new tune, an a cappella, beautiful. It's on YouTube. You should listen to it. We had Israeli chefs arguing about how to make the best falafel, and just celebrated Israel and celebrated Yom HaAtzmaut on a global basis in partnership with the Jewish Agency and Karen Hayesod. So we're also are trying to give people a chance to be uplifted, and to celebrate. So with that, again, let me just say thank you to your community. Thank you to this synagogue for everything you do. and happy to participate in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Eric. Before we take questions, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask a question, and then kindly mute yourself afterwards so we don't have to hear my kids in the background. But my question for you is that, first of all, our federation has been great. I think the communication level between the synagogue and the federation, both on the business side and also on the clergy side. So I could speak to very personally the fact that our federation is making sure that not only the clergy have what we need in terms of sharing programs, ideas, etc., but also our mental health, like getting us together where we don't normally do and saying, like, are you guys okay? So I see normally what a challenge that is when you have so many different institutions and trying to sort of manage that under one roof. I can only imagine how much more amplified that is for you. So could you speak to a minute about like what the greatest challenges are, I'm sure on a good day, let alone when there's no crisis, but of having so many, this huge umbrella organization, and how do you manage that? It must be unbelievably overwhelming, in my opinion.
Want to start, Mark?
No, you go ahead.
So look, first of all, you're right. 146 federations. It's a very diverse set of communities, from the largest, the New York, to and LA and Chicago, and down to very small communities. We have federations that have 400 employees and federations that have 2 employees. And then federations that serve communities, from 6 million in New York to a couple thousand or even less in some of the smaller communities. So it's a hugely diverse network, and at the best of times, being able to help find things and strategies that support every community when it's that diverse is very hard. My experience is, this is actually, it's interesting you asked me this, because even though I'm less than a year into this job, it's actually the 3rd job I've had as the head of the central body of a large decentralized system. Mark mentioned I led the university system of Ohio, the public universities in Ohio. And there's nothing more decentralized than a single university, let alone every department, every professor is its own, its own 501c3 practically, let alone a university system of multiple universities, and then Hillel, 600 Hillels, but ranging from Rutgers with 5,000-6,000 Jewish students to a small liberal arts campus with 100 or 200 Jewish students. So very diverse environments. I think what you find is that the success comes from shared values, shared goals, shared commitment, and then understanding that the way we carry out those goals, those values, might differ from place to place, but that ultimately we're contributing collectively. So our shared value of seeing that we have flourishing Jewish communities, and that a flourishing community is healthy and safe and inclusive and welcoming and educated and engaged, and that then we may have different strategies community by community, but we stand for those things and we get behind those things. That wherever we are and whoever we are, we need to be involved in the civic life of our country and of our states and of our communities. I mean, after all, this isn't just by luck that we are, that we're fortunate enough to live in this free and open society that welcomes different faiths, and certainly is probably the most welcoming state other than the state of Israel itself to Jewish people in the history of our people. And we want to make sure that continues, which means we have to be engaged in the civic life of our society. We want those values for other minorities as well. And then finally, we want to stand with and for and on behalf of the Jewish people around the world. We know we live in a true miraculous time where we have our sovereign Jewish state of Israel that is, that is flourishing, thank God, but that also needs to continue to have our love and our support every day. So we share these values, and then we, work together on how best to implement them in a very diverse place. I think organizations that don't have that close tie in terms of what we're working on, then it's easy. Then they can fall apart, but we never will.
If I can just take Eric's Cleveland roots, Mort Mandel of blessed memory. He wrote a book called It's All About the Who. And I think, and I agree, the shared values are important to help some of the points you mentioned in your question, Rabbi, but it's about leadership too, and executing in a proper way, in a way that communicates those shared values and effectuates them properly. And I think that leadership, we're fortunate to have in the Federation system. I think any institution, any organization, that's critical. And in the Jewish community, we're fortunate to have a lot of tremendous, and I know training is a big part. We didn't really mention on it, but before this crisis, that's a big part of what JFNA does, is training the next generation of leadership, having all kinds of programs, whether it's the Masaz that some of our kids are familiar with, or the birthrights, or the professional training programs. And I think that also helps cut through a lot of the potential politics. And the reality is this crisis has galvanized everyone, where there's really isn't time to infight. We're too busy getting about doing things. And so that's an opportunity that comes unfortunately out of this crisis. But the shared values, but the leadership shouldn't be underestimated. So.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Can I make a comment?
Sure, Michael.
To put in perspective a little bit what Eric and Mark were talking about the PPP loans, the agencies in our own community received over $16 million in PPP loans. If they didn't receive those loans because the revenue has dropped obviously significantly at the JCCs in Scotch Plains and in West Orange, everyone would be on the unemployment line that worked there. So this is giving them the ability to get a paycheck still. It's not a long-term solution. It's only for 8 weeks, but it's a very vital point in moving our agencies forward. What Mark was just talking about is the working together. Last year as campaign chair, I was able to go to Argentina. I was able to go to Moscow, and as well as they had Fed World in Washington, D.C. last year. This year, I was looking forward to going to Israel in July, and I believe you were having your GA in Chicago this year, Eric. Those were significant camaraderie, both for the professionals and for the leadership to learn the experiences of what Jewish life is outside of the United States, especially. As well as to work with other professionals. Eric, how do you make up for that going forward? Because we're not going to be able to meet and see in Israel as well as in Chicago, potentially, the ability to trade what we've learned as federations and as groups, so we can learn from each other and hopefully learn and move forward.
Well, look, it's a huge loss. There's no way around it. And Michael, it was great being with you in Argentina last summer, and I'll look forward to traveling with you again soon. And thank you for your leadership. No question, it's a loss. But as you're doing as a synagogue, and you're doing on this in this conversation, we're just going to have to be innovative and find new ways to connect with each other. We have put together an innovation team for 2020 campaigns and events to identify those ways that we can help each local federation, speakers, programs, Zooms, performances, all that kind of stuff, and then also put together some national events. I mean, we're going to do that mission virtually somehow this fall. This summer, and we need to figure out how best to do that. The GA's, everybody knows General Assembly is the major national gathering of Jewish communities, sort of the equivalent of, not quite as big, but equivalent of what AIPAC is in terms of the U.S.-Israel relationship, but this is the gathering of Jewish communities and Jewish leadership from around the world. We're not going to be able to be in Chicago, unfortunately, in October. We're not going to have several thousand people in a hotel in Chicago. But I want to say that I'm taking this as a particular challenge and opportunity, which is, unlike some of the conferences that had already been scheduled, and then when they got canceled in person, they just moved the planned event online, just moved it into an online space. We actually are going to be able to plan this one from scratch. designed it for online. And as much as it is a hardship that we won't be able to be in person, it also means we can, we can probably get more speakers and better and different speakers. So, you don't have to fly them all into Chicago, and and you can be more flexible with time, and we can. Sorry, a call came in, so make sure it's back. Some people participate who might not have otherwise been able to participate because either they couldn't come to the conference or they were homebound for some reason. So we're going to look at it as an opportunity to expand our reach and connect with people who we might not otherwise have connected to. But we're ready to go back and to go back to in-person events. The minute that there's an all clear to travel to Israel, or to any of our communities, we know that federations will be the first ones on the plane.
Eric, I just have to plug with my partner Jane here. Jane is chairing. We're having the 100th anniversary of Metro West Federation. It's our centennial in 2023. So 1923 is the establishment of our federation, and I hopefully will be in Israel long before that. But certainly all of you, and especially those of you who were on the last mission, which was incredible. There will be another big mission in 23 and a lot of other events along with the centennial. So I'd be remiss if I didn't plug that. And with Jane's leadership, I know it'll be pretty special.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there? Not all at once. That's great. Well, you know what, Eric, I want to thank you so much for your unbelievably precious time and for everything that you're doing, Mark. And I feel so privileged, and I call our shul the Chihuahua shul. We're tiny but mighty. We Baruch Hashem, we get a lot done, and we have we spread a big footprint on the Jewish community in a very, very good way. And you're a very big part of that. So it's a pleasure to have you here in virtual person. I can't wait to host you in person in our shul here in Livingston. And again, thank you everybody for taking the time. And this session is being recorded, so it will be shared, and everybody can learn about the great work that our federation and Metro West is doing, and also JFNA. So again, I wish everybody should just have a healthy day, be healthy, be careful, and soon enough we'll get back to normal. So thank you again, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Amen. Thank you.
Great to be with you all. Take care.